I have a weird relationship with Solo Leveling Warrior. I think the series is fantastic, and the late author did a wonderful job creating the series. It is a wondrous creation. However, sometimes I think people try and chase what Solo Leveling made, failing to see what made it so special. But there are some series that I have maybe just a little bit judged a little too harshly at first, when they're actually really great. Solo Leveling was a game changer, a fantastic series that's changed our thoughts on the overpowered protagonist trope and recreated our attachment to one of the oldest tropes in literature, the rags to riches story. Y'all remember that trope? When someone from modest means, through hard work, luck, and happenstance, manages to make it big. Rags to riches is used a lot in romance stuff. However, the rags to riches trope can also be applied to Solo Leveling-like series, where we meet someone from modest means, usually a low-tier person in a fantasy world, through hard work and luck and happenstance, manages to make it big. Whether it be getting rich, gaining strong allies, becoming stronger, whatever reason. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is mainly because there are plenty of series that are quite similar to Solo Leveling, because nothing is original anymore. Instead of focusing on what this series is like, we should focus on what this series brings to the table and not compare it to other series, as I did once. Look, I'm not perfect. I saw this series, my S-Class Hunters, about an F-ranker living in a world of dungeons and fantasy powers and ranks and whatever. Like I said, it was pretty similar to Solo Leveling Warrior. Now, I typically try to give everything a chance, but I thought this series was just a little too similar to Solo Leveling and left it at that. Probably to go breed another romance series, I'll be honest. However, a week or two ago, I was bored on Instagram and saw an ad for the series and thought, hey, let's give that a try. And man, oh man, was I wrong. But I should explain. My S-Class Hunters focuses on a world of awakened people and dungeons. Okay, the why of it isn't important. It's more the who we should focus on. We start our series with Yujin, a college dropout who's working part-time jobs to put his brother through school. During his job, gateways that have randomly appeared throughout the world suddenly start to release monsters. These gateways are dungeons, and when the dungeons remain unclear, a dungeon break occurs, when the monsters are suddenly released into the world. But while this occurred, certain people were randomly awakened with powers, becoming hunters, including the little brother of our main character, becoming one of the strongest S-Class hunters in the world. While life got better for Yujin's little brother, the same cannot be said for Yujin himself, who only became an F-rank hunter who's barely able to scrape by the lowest level dungeon and stop. I know what you're thinking. I was thinking it too. I think the first 5 minutes of me were talking about what you were thinking. This series is really similar to Solo Leveling. Yeah, dungeons, hunters, powers, ranks. These things weren't invented by Solo Leveling, but it's the series that popularized them into one reverse isekai package genre thing. The comparison is easy to make, I literally just made it. However, what this series brings to the table, I think, is pretty cool, and I think a little cooler than what Solo Leveling did. Yujin is an F-ranker. He spent all of his money getting his rank evaluated after his little brother cut him out of his life. Wanting to become a hunter to be with his brother again, but only becoming an F-rank hunter. But what his powers are is actually pretty interesting. Custodian. The ability to take custody of people around him. When he does, he basically gives them a mild buff. However, an interesting twist is that when someone under his custody dies, the skill Final Thanks is used, as he gets to use their ability temporarily with double its power, and even gets to see some of the memories of the person who died, which all comes back into play during the dungeon run, as the unbeatable dragon Rashit appears, almost killing Yujin until his brother comes and saves him but dies in the process. As Yujin's skill activates, we see the hidden truths of their lives, as his little brother cut him out of his life to protect him, so that they wouldn't target him to get to the strongest S-rank hunter known throughout the land. That he hated the fact that he couldn't talk to, reach out to, or help his older brother who provided him so much love in his life. That he couldn't see it until he died. After using the strongest S-rank hunter's power to defeat the unbeatable dragon Rashit, whatever I said before, Yujin gains the title of Dragon Slayer and a wish stone, a stone that can grant any wish but unable to bring back the dead. So Yujin wishes to go back in time before his brother died, before he entered the dungeon, before he even got his awakening, to live a quiet life outside of the dungeon. And he's transported 5 years into the past. This series may use the same base as Solo Leveling, but it builds an entirely different story. Instead of focusing on one person's rise to power, it focuses on Yujin, someone who, even after gaining the title of Dragon Slayer, gaining legendary resistances and better versions of his old powers, even after traveling through time, is still and probably will always remain an F ranker. Not focusing on the rags to riches F to S ranker story, instead keeping the focus on someone whose powers are seeing and improving other people's ability and strength. I think you can tell the difference by what this series deems important, that theme being connections or family, that the bonds we create with others are often the strongest things in our life. A little cheesy to be fair, but a far cry from these overpowered protagonist series that focuses on the rags to riches F to S ranker story. Weirdly, I'd connect this series most to Omniscient Reader and Batman? Omniscient Reader is another fantastic reverse isekai overpowered protagonist series, good lord, these names are getting so long, where the main character's actual strength comes from his knowledge, not his skills or his power. And the same can be said about My S-Class Hunter, a series that almost feels like an Avengers kind of deal, or at least the end credit scene with Nick Fury, who Yujin weirdly reminds me of. Instead of Yujin himself being some strong, invincible hunter, he instead relies on his knowledge of the future and building up a team of strong other fighters, improving them and making them stronger than they were or ever could be. I don't want to spend too much time on the characters, mainly because I think you should experience that for yourself. But each of these characters thrive not only because Yujin has an ability that makes them stronger, but because of the connection they form with Yujin himself. Our first character, Yiram Park, was a young girl whose parents passed away, and her uncle was negligent and borderline abusive towards her, stealing the inheritance her parents left her to invest in his own failing business, not caring enough to even buy her proper shoes. In the future, she's known as the Ice Queen, an S-rank hunter who, surprise surprise, uses ice and is cold and distant and snobby. However, Yujin meets her before she's even awakened, being able to convince her to join his side, not just by telling her she has a chance to become a high-rank hunter, but just by being a decent person. Sure, he does have an ulterior motive, that being to get an S ranker to join his team, but Yujin still provides connections and a familial love that Yiram Park probably had never received since her parents passed away, changing her future from that cold, distant, and apparently snobby ice queen that she would have become into someone who's cheerful, excited, and caring. Myunwoo Yu was an F ranker who didn't have a future that Yujin knew about, likely dying to cruel and downright hostile moneylenders. However, thanks to Yujin, he was not only able to live and have a life, but even a future that no one thought he would have. Sungham Kim was an A-rank bodyguard that Yujin's little brother put to guard Yujin himself, someone whose daily life was being a famous A-rank hunter, and he was reminded of his late grandfather when hanging out with Yujin. And finally, Yujin's little brother himself, Yu Huan, who was basically just a teenager whose life randomly changed when he became one of the strongest and most powerful S-Class hunters in the world, who now had to balance running a guild, assassination attempts, jealous business owners, and the world watching him. If people knew that his only living family member was important to him, everyone would try their best to get to the strongest man in the world through one of the weakest. He was scared, he was nervous, he was afraid. That's why the future we saw at the beginning was like that. He was just a kid who didn't know what to do. One of the biggest reasons I love this series is the emphasis on family. Both the family that you have and also the family that you create. Yujin and Yu Huan were brothers who lost their way, but after some time were able to make amends and have each other in their lives again. And Yujin was able to show that familial love to a wide range of people. People who have forgotten what it meant to have someone in their life who just genuinely cared for them. Honestly, it's a great series and a good reminder to not judge a book by its cover, to remain open, because who knows when I or you'll find your next favorite Webtoon series. But that's all for today. So like always, thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you next week. Take care.